Welcome to Remote First Innovators, the podcast for leaders who are scaling companies built for the modern world. We sit down with founders and experts in distributed work to explore how they've broken down barriers and solved the real-world challenges of growing and running remote teams. Each episode dives into practical strategies for onboarding, IT, security, compliance, and everything it takes to build a thriving distributed business. No fluff, no theory, just what works when your team is everywhere and operations never stop. Here are your hosts, Robert Phelps and Jake Gump.
Welcome to another episode of Remote First Innovators, the podcast for business leaders and entrepreneurs who are building, managing, and growing remote or hybrid teams. Today's guest spent about 20 years in corporate learning and development, mostly in the call center space, before making the leap into contracting and eventually buying the company he was contracting for. That company is Insignia Training Partners, a virtual event production and L&D consultancy that has produced over 6,000 virtual events for clients ranging from Johnson & Johnson and McKinsey, all the way down to the solopreneur coach trying to build a business from their home office. Got tired of the corporate machine, went out on his own, and then in the kind of moment most of us only dream about, the previous owner handed him the keys to the kingdom. He bought the company, pivoted his model during COVID, and has never looked back. His specialty is helping speakers, trainers, coaches, and enterprise organizations stop running forgettable virtual meetings and start delivering experiences that actually land. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Bernie DeSantis.
Yeah, Jake, thank you very much for having me. I don't know if I could have said any of that better myself. Thank you very much.
Yeah, love it, man. I try to nail these intros. So
You did really good. It's awesome. Thank you.
So to get started, take us back to your corporate L&D days. You spent about 20 years in that world, and as I said, mostly call centers. And what was it about that environment that shaped how you think about engagement and communication today?
The call center space is a very interesting one, right? And especially when I was in that space in the early 2000s, right? You're thinking of basically pre-social media, and like everything you were doing was over the phone. So communication was always and soft skills was always a big part of what we had to teach in that environment. I guess I'll say it this way in kind of a story. The wisdom of my teens, I went and got myself a marketing degree, thinking that all the widgets out there needed to be marketed because I had no clue what I wanted to be when I grew up. So naturally, with a marketing degree in hand, my first job was in sales. I was working for Quicken Loans as a mortgage banker, making 100 phone calls a day, doing the smile and dial routine. And after about 60 days, realized that was not the life for me. So I started looking for some other work and happened to go to the company intranet page where I found a job posting for a leadership development trainer position. It was a new role that they were bringing out to the organization. So I wasn't happy in my role as a banker. I had nothing to lose. So I threw my hat in the ring without ever having led a team and without ever having trained anyone in any official capacity. And frankly, to my shock and surprise, I ended up getting the job. And my role there in the leadership development team was as an experiential trainer. So what I would do is I would take large groups of these up and coming leaders, and we would go do ropes courses. We would go and do SWAT team trainings. I would build these full day immersive activities, sometimes gamified, that focused on the same skill sets they'd use to run a team in the office: problem solving, communication, teamwork, strategic thinking, and the likes. But of course, when you got somebody dangling 3 stories up in the air by a little rope, or they have rubber bullets flying by their head, or they think they're just playing a game, they really learn a lot of things about themselves. And not to pat myself on the back too hard, but one of the main reasons I've stayed in learning and development all of these years is the feedback from the participants from those type of events, right? When they have that light bulb moment, the thing turns on for them, they overcome the challenge. They went home and had a conversation with their parent or spouse they've been putting off for 2 years because I ran them through a communication exercise. Having someone come up and tell you that you changed their life, like that was very significant for me. And that is why I've stayed in this business for as long as I have, because making an impact is really what lights me up. I'm in business to make money, of course, but I wake up in the morning because this is fulfilling work. I like working with people, educating people, showing them the best way to deliver presentations now in this context, but generally speaking, giving them the skills and knowledge they need to be successful.
What did you see on LinkedIn that made you think, man, there's a real market here?
Yeah. So, throughout the course of COVID, we got really heavy into the virtual training and event space, but mostly managing virtual classrooms so that it would be engaging for the audience. And we did probably just throughout COVID about 4,000 events. But then as again, the business started to change a little bit, and I started to think, okay, who else can I be working with? Where else can I be providing value? And lo and behold, here on LinkedIn, you scroll for 5 or 10 minutes and you'll probably see half a dozen to a dozen master classes that you could go to, right? And in some cases, these appear to be pretty credible people. They should be a subject matter expert. And so I started going to some of them. I'm like, okay, well, I have an eye for this. I've done plenty of them, on the corporate side. Let me see what these are about. And I started showing up to them, and no lie, 1 out of every 10 was pretty good. Not great. It was pretty good. Like the other 9 out of 10, varying levels of dumpster fire. And it's not because the individual doesn't know what they're talking about, not because they're not a subject matter expert. They just have a really hard time communicating virtual. Virtual is different than in-person delivery. You can't deliver a virtual presentation using the exact same flow that you would in person. It is a different stage. It's a different medium. There's different ways of engaging. And so I would see people delivering public master classes, never turning on their camera. I would see them never engage the audience. Not a single polling question, not a single chat prompt, nothing but them talking at the audience for an hour. And I realized, okay, these people are going to be out here doing virtual no matter what. I know I can help them do it better. And so I started activating my network. I do a ton of networking. And quite frankly, what I do is very much a trust-based sale. My clients have to believe that I'm going to help them. And so there is a relationship component to that. And so as opposed to chasing RFPs and going after large corporate deals, I do a ton of networking, and I get a ton of referrals from that network with people who are looking for the exact service that I offer, right? Helping them to deliver great virtual training, whether that's publicly or privately to, their existing clients.
I think I'm just as curious as probably the listeners right now, but, what would you consider, you mentioned some of those good traits, but in your mind, what's a really good webinar have, and what's a dumpster fire have? And maybe if you have an example of a dumpster, I'm sure you have plenty.
Yeah, definitely have some dumpster fire examples. Especially early days of COVID, you saw a lot of this, and you still see a bit of it now, but simple things like, where do you place your camera and how do you frame yourself, right? What does your background look like in your virtual delivery? How is your lighting? Can't tell you how many people I've seen that have lights behind them and it looks like they're in witness protection trying to deliver a webinar. Like that is not a good look. But then, again, during COVID more so than now, but people just not being familiar with the platform they're delivering in. I usually use Zoom, right? And so people would forget to set up a waiting room, or if they do have a waiting room, they leave it on and not watch it when they're delivering and they have 15 people waiting to be let in. Those are the little things that can create a really poor experience for somebody. Jake, you may be the subject matter expert in the thing that you do, but if you don't give me a good experience in hearing you speak, guess what? I'm probably not going to buy your widget. I'm not going to engage with you afterwards. And so seeing a lot of those things happen over and over again, it just created that opportunity. Now, the flip side of that is what makes a great event? Really thoughtful planning, thinking through what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes it's just brand awareness, right? You're just doing a good thing, providing value out to your audience so that they think of you. You stay top of mind. Sometimes you're actually trying to sell a widget. Sometimes you've already sold what you're doing and you're delivering the final product to your client, right? Virtually. So you want to think through very strategically what the purpose of your event is, who the audience is, what experience you want them to have. And if you do that, you will likely have a pretty good event. Probably the number one tip that I would give people, Jake, is this. If you expect to have more than 10 people in your room, don't Zoom alone. Multitasking is at best overrated and if not, a complete fallacy when you are trying to deliver virtually. There are too many things to pay attention to manage logistics while also trying to engage and deliver content effectively.
I mean, especially if you're, trying to give a presentation and someone comes in and they're, I've been in, plenty of webinars where people are just going nuts, whether it's in chat or whether it's, their video. I mean, you need a host, or you need a manager that's taking care of that, because you have to deliver the content. You can't be worrying about what's going on in the audience, right? So to speak.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you do want to pay attention to the engagement in the audience, but you shouldn't be the one managing it if you're also the person delivering the content, right? Those are two very separate roles. There are some folks that have mastered it and do it really, really well. But those are really few and far between, if we're honest. If we talk about the really high level speakers that are delivering virtually, they don't have one producer supporting them. They have a team of producers supporting them that make it look like a seamless experience, and that they are the one doing all of it. The reality is there's probably 3 to 5 people behind the scenes pulling all the strings.
I always wondered that. I always wondered how many people it actually took to like pull something off, like a webinar.
Yeah, I mean, the more people you have in the room, the more hands on deck, man.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You were last time we were talking. You said a stat that really impressed me. You were saying that like you've done over 6,000 virtual events, and you were telling me that there's some reasons why you actually get people that convert, and then and impacts people from ones that just are just taking up space on a calendar. Can you is there something else that we could tell them that is kind of a main driver of those?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the prior question as well. We can expand a little bit. It's oftentimes less about the information that you're delivering and more about the experience, how you make people feel, right? People spend way too much time standing on a soapbox talking about why they're great and how much information they know and can deliver to you, as opposed to actually providing value and engaging with the audience in a way that makes sense. Virtual, every 5 to 10 minutes, and that's at the long end, you need to do something to engage your audience. You can't just talk at people for an hour. You're going to lose them. Like, here in my home office, Jake, I have 7 monitors that I work from, right? I know that is not normal. Most people have 1, 2, maybe 3, right? They don't have a wall of monitors like I do. But if you imagine for a moment that I was coming to your webinar, I'm going to have Zoom or whatever platform on one monitor, the one right here in front of me. But that means I have 6 others that have my email, Slack, Teams, LinkedIn, Facebook, security camera. I could be watching a baseball game on one of my monitors and you would never know it. You have to engage your audience in virtual at regular intervals or you will lose them 100% of the time.
One of the things you said that stuck with me, most virtual meetings are just a copy paste of an in-person meeting, and it just doesn't work. And for a business leader that's managing a remote or hybrid team, what's the one thing they could change this week to make their team meetings actually effective?
Well, I'll give you an example. One of the things that I do is I'm president of a networking group, right? We have 18 people show up every week. There's always a good, little educational component to what we do, very heavy on networking and introductions, right? Who do we want to meet? How do we support each other's businesses? But every meeting, even though it's the same meeting pretty much every time, we have a couple of formats, but it's pretty much the same meeting. At the end of every meeting, we run a polling question. Sounds really simple, but that polling question is one of the main reasons everybody sticks around all the way to the end, because they want to make sure that they get a chance to participate in the fact or crap poll. So it is basically just true or false, right? 2 truths and a lie. And every single week, or every month rather, we have a theme. And so, for example, last month, I think was branding. And so the fact or crap questions were all around branding. And we would try to figure out which ones are true, which ones are false. So it's just a really simple, it takes like 30 seconds, a simple activity that engages everybody just for a few seconds that excites them. If as a leader in an office environment where I have a remote team, I'm having regular meetings with my team, there has to be something in there that people look forward to that isn't just the meeting. There has to be some additional engagement, right? Maybe it's top wins of the week. You go around the room and, share something personal or professional, right? What are you guys doing this weekend that's fun and not work related? There are a lot of things within the virtual platform that you can potentially do. Breakout rooms are amazing, right? If you integrate even one of those little elements, it changes the whole vibe. I would probably say this: the number one thing that I have always done, whether in person or virtual, is start my meetings with music. High energy music, as people are flowing into the room, creates a vibe, creates an emotional response that is positive when they are entering the room. Always sets the tone.
Wow. Something easy as some music when you come in the room. That's amazing. Now, what type of music? I mean, because I'm a metalhead, but
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to depend on your audience and your content, right? Like, so as an example, I was using Superstitious by Stevie Wonder for a long time. I love that one. In case you can't tell, I'm a huge Iron Man fan. So, like, right at the beginning of Iron Man, they play Back in Black, AC/DC. So I've walked out to that one. Absolutely love it. But it depends. I mentioned to you in pre-show, and the first time that we met, one of my clients is a death doula. Right. So he is helping people at the end of their life. People have heard of a birth doula or a midwife. He's the opposite end. So he's having conversations in and around death. It could be suicide. It could be terminal illness, things like that. We start every single one of his meetings with the type of music that you would expect if you're going in to have a massage, right? Like really peaceful, serene type music, because it sets the tone for his type of meeting.
that makes a lot of sense. I'm just kind of curious. How did that client find you that was doing the death duel? you know, I mean, what does it mean to you to produce that kind of event?
Yeah, I well, like I said earlier, I really like to do work that has an impact, right? Whether we're talking about corporate learning and development or, more this side of things with the coaches and solopreneurs. It means a lot to work with somebody like my friend Bob, who is the death doula. He and I were introduced through networking. I've known him for several years. He was an executive coach prior to becoming a certified death doula. Um, as I mentioned earlier, with all of my business development right now, it's about building relationships. It's about having trust, making sure that they understand I'm going to support helping them with that type of environment. As it pertains to Bob, one, we had a relationship already, but two, he's seen my work. He's shown up for some other events that I've done where we had to hold some very significant space for a topic. I do a quarterly virtual event called Let's Talk About Suicide. Very heavy content, right? But I like to think that we handle it with care and compassion, and people take a lot away from that event.
You're running the company solo, right? One W-2 employee, a network of 1099 contractors, a bank, and actually a thing I thought was kind of cool is that you had a bank of 3,000 vetted resources from your predecessor. And a lot of people don't have that, but what's the advantage of that model, and what's the hardest part of just dealing with 1099s?
I think the hardest part of it is that you don't have a dedicated team, right? Like if you have a team of a few people that are doing their 40 hours a week, you know what their responsibilities are, like things get done. So if you got to shuffle people in, that can get a little bit difficult from time to time, right? Just managing all of the different pieces. But I think the benefit of it, because the company was originally founded to do staff augmentation, right? We were sending facilitators and coaches and designers out to larger companies. But having that bank of people, that bank of knowledge and expertise available that I can draw on at almost any time, is worth its weight in gold, right? Almost any client could come to me and say, "Hey, I want a training about X." And in all likelihood, maybe 2 or 3 degrees of separation, I probably have that subject matter expert in the bench, right? In the bag that I can bring in and I can call in. One of my biggest clients is I can't mention them by name. They are one of the largest business associations in the country, over 30,000 members within it. And they leverage me almost like a speaker agency, because I have all of these people back here who have all of this very specific subject matter expertise. When they come to me and say, "Hey, we need a course on strategic planning," I find that expert. We say, "Okay, this is the content they want delivered." We put together the virtual event focusing in on engagement and outcomes, right? We want to make sure people walk away with something. And then I'm able to present my expert who I've worked with previously, their content, and we deliver it to the end client.
And that's awesome.
Yeah. I like to think of myself kind of like a broker, right? Like I'm not always the one who's doing all of the work, but I have the resources that I bring in and kind of act like the quarterback.
Man, you can put a good team together and you know what everybody's doing and you've got the recipe for success. I love that. And so what would you say the most common industries that you work with? Is there like I mean, I know probably like the bigger, obviously Johnson Johnson Pharmaceutical, right? But how about in the solopreneur space? Like, is there any like main industries you feel like, man, this industry really needs my help?
Yeah, ooh, good question. I would say that I have always said that I'm generally industry agnostic. I don't really care what the widget is necessarily. I care about the learners learning what they need to from the event and people having a good experience there. Having said that, it's usually going to be the people who are very mission driven. They are very focused on having a great experience for people, i.e., the death doula. Um, let's talk about suicide, right? Those type of events where there is real meaning and we really need to hold space for it. So those type of coaches are really good. But I've also found technology. I work with an AI strategist and coach. She's got an 8-week program that coaches people through solopreneurs how to implement AI in their small business. And we run a workshop that she uses to fill her program. For me, it's really about impact, right? Does the person want to make an impact in their community or with their audience? And those are the type of people that I like to work with. Typically, they are going to be the coach, the consultant, they're a speaker, they're a trainer, some form of a subject matter expert in the thing that they do. Those are my people.
Now, you mentioned Zoom earlier, and is there some go-to that you're like, hey, this is a platform that you probably need to be speaking out of? Obviously, Zoom is probably the most popular, but is there any others that and why is Zoom so good versus other, or is it kind of just a toss up?
I think that there are certainly features and benefits to other platforms that can be valuable. And again, it comes down to what are you really trying to accomplish in your event. I mean, even Zoom in and of itself, you have webinars versus meetings, right? Like they are different formats. But then you have things like Teams. Teams has its own, ability to be able to do screen shares and the things, and it sounds a lot like the Zoom experience, but that's not the main purpose for Teams. The main purpose for Teams is file sharing and collaboration, not delivering featured content, right? So for me, Zoom is kind of the OG. I really like it because I have so much experience delivering it in it within the confines of COVID, right? Everybody and their grandmother, at very least, had a conversation on Zoom once or twice. So user experience, people understand how to use it pretty well. I'm not a fan of Teams. Like I said, it's really more of a collaboration platform than a content delivery platform. Adobe Connect is really good, but it's really expensive. I'm not a fan of Google Meet personally. Again, good for a virtual coffee, a one-on-one. I'm not a really big fan of their engagement features in there. And then I would probably venture to say, Jake, that I get pitch slapped at least once, if not 5 times a week on the next Zoom killer virtual platform that somebody's rolling out.
Is there any up and comers that you've seen that are kind of like, this is thinking pretty good?
I've been hearing really good things about Butter. I've only been in it a couple of times for a virtual coffee, but I had them kind of walk me through it, and the experience is actually pretty good. There's some pretty cool things to it. I don't know that I'll ever go completely away from Zoom. Although I'll be honest with you, there's probably going to come a point in the very near future where AI replaces the need for someone to manage the virtual room, right? You're going to be able to talk to the AI in there. So I think that will be the next interesting development when it comes to the platforms. Because they're already pretty much there, right? You got in Zoom the AI companion, like it's documenting it all, it's learning. There's going to come a point when you say Zoom AI, open the breakout room, and it opens, and that's going to be cool.
Yeah, but I mean, you still got to. I mean, you still got. I think majority of us don't really know. We just pop in there, we leave things the last minute,
And that is the key. Exactly right there, Jake, is a lot of people don't take the deep dive into how does the platform actually work? How are the settings set up? I not long ago, I introduced polling questions to somebody who I know has done hundreds of virtual events, had no idea that they even existed. But then once he learned that they existed, he put 27 of them in his next event. Like there also is some etiquette to how often and how you use some of these things, right? Like an hour-long virtual event, 3 to 5 polling questions, maybe, right? Like 27 is excessive. And that's kind of the point. And I think where my value really is, pushing the buttons is just one of the things that we do. And again, AI can replace pushing the buttons. But knowing when to push the buttons, knowing what button to push, knowing how it needs to be set up, knowing how it's best going to be delivered for the audience experience, that's where I bring value.
I mean, let's take my business for instance. If Robert came to me, which is the owner of Creative IT for people who don't know, and he was like, Jake, hey, I heard we need to run a webinar, and I want some sales out of it. And I mean, what do you do at that point? Are you kind of like, man, I need to get a hold of Bernie, and I need to figure out like, what am I doing here? And what am I talking about? Like, I have no clue. Like, where do I start here? And what's the process if I'm in that position and I'm trying to, figure out how to do a webinar and get some sales out of it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely first step that I would love is for people to contact me, and I'd be happy to hold their hand throughout the entire process. But, I'll be honest with you as well, Jake. I really love working with clients who have tried to do it on their own. And to use my term earlier, have had a dumpster fire because they've recognized that they don't know all of the stuff. Truth be told, you can go to ChatGPT and you can probably say, "Hey, this is what I want to do. Give me a pretty good idea of what I want to do," and you'd be okay for the most part. The things that I would suggest really focusing in on is virtual presence. People think that they just turn on the camera and start talking. There's intentionality here, right? You want to make sure, again, framed properly, lit properly. You want people to be able to hear you properly. All of those things matter in the virtual experience as much as they do in person, right? You're not going to show up to an in-person event having not showered or shaved or, wearing a V-neck t-shirt that you slept in the night before, right? It's the same equivalent here in virtual. You have to take the time to prepare for it and how you show up and make that good first impression. So that's just general etiquette, right? Showing up in virtual, you want to be intentional. But more to your point about content and the outcome, you also have to think about who the audience is going to be, right? If, as an example, Jake, your primary target audience or client is the CEO of a $5 to $50 million company, the likelihood that they're going to come to your free webinar to talk about whatever it is that you talk about is slim to none, because a CEO of a $5 to $50 million company has bigger fish to fry than to talk about whatever it is or hear you talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Now, that same CEO, they are more likely to show up format wise to something you call a roundtable, where they feel they get to participate. There will be other attendees that are at the same level as them. They can not only provide value, but take value, plus have some networking. That is the event a $5 to $50 million CEO will likely attend. They're not going to come to your free webinar. So you have to really think through, who is the audience? What are their motivations? What are the reasons that they would or would not come to my event? And how do I create a format that is going to engage that audience? Because if you do a webinar and you're expecting the CEO to show up and just listen to you talk at them for an hour, you're fooling yourself. They're probably not going to do that.
Yeah, we were talking, you recommended a 30 to 45 day runway before an event. Walk us through what that prep window actually looks like, and what decisions need to be made in what order.
Well, I think we touched on it earlier. Just deciding on the platform that you're going to use. You want to make sure that you understand the platform as well as possible. Get into the settings. Make sure you have your waiting room set up. If you plan on using polling questions, make sure that feature is active, right? Waiting room, polling questions, breakout rooms, annotations, playing videos, having co-host, like all of those things need to be considered. Because oftentimes the difference between an okay or good event And a great one is in those little details, right? The experience that people have. And then after that, if it's a public event, right, you got to think about LinkedIn and how am I going to promote it? Maybe it's not LinkedIn, maybe it's Facebook, maybe your audience is on Instagram. What does all of that look like? And now you're talking about marketing and branding, creating assets. What does the message need to be? Then, of course, once somebody registers, well, how are you to get them the link, right? What does the follow-up sequence need to be? Do you have to nurture those relationships before they actually show up? Probably do. You don't want them to register and then not hear from you again until the day of the event. But then, of course, what happens after the event? Let's say you actually get people to show up and you actually do a good thing. Now you have to have a follow-up process. You have to think about, I've got 100 people that registered for my event. How am I going to communicate with them afterwards so that leads to a sale or whatever that next step is? All of those things you need to think through. And if you don't, you're probably not going to get the result that you want. You'll get a result, but it may not be the result that you want.
Do you help them dial in who they need to be talking to? I know it's in sales, it's everything. I mean, you're finding the ideal client of who you need to be talking to. And a lot of people get worried about, man, how do I even get a list of people? And I mean, is that something you help out with?
Yeah, we are able to help out with that. As much as possible, Jake, I try to meet my clients where they're at, right? Some of them come to me and they've got fully fleshed out content. They've actually delivered it a dozen times already, and they just realize they need a co-pilot during the event. And then I've got other clients where literally the first time they talk to me is step one for them. They don't have any content. They don't even have a title for their event. They don't really know who they want to deliver it for. Somebody just said, "Hey, Joe, you should do a webinar." And they're like, "Okay, I want to do a webinar." And now they need to figure it out. So yeah, ICP, right? Who are you going to talk to? Content creation and presentation delivery coaching. We help with the actual event in and of itself. I will have a team member show up and run all of the logistics for you. So you are the only person, the only thing you have to do is deliver the content, is talk to your audience. And then we will also set up some of those messaging campaigns with them afterwards. Some of my clients have, fully fleshed out funnels already and email campaigns and social media campaigns, and they're podcasting and they're doing all types of stuff. And this is just one more piece of the overall strategy. And again, other clients, like, this is the strategy. That is the only thing that they do is virtual events, and we meet them wherever they're at. However we're able to support them, we do. I do a lot of the production myself still at this point, but I have access to, at the height of COVID, I had 50 virtual producers working consistently. And I still have access to them. I just don't have that level of volume where I need it right now. But yeah, those people, they make such a difference when you are running an event. I feel like I trailed off a little bit there, Jake. We're gonna need to edit that one.
No, that's good. That's good. And my thought is with all of these events and getting all of this going, it's kind of it's a lot. It can be a lot. And I think the big thing from my standpoint is, what happens when something goes really bad during it? And I mean, I just can't imagine being in the middle of a webinar and you got someone coming in and distracting everybody. And you were sharing something with me earlier that was hilarious, and you actually said people have success. So tell them about that.
Yeah, I mean, dumpster fires come in various forms, and sometimes you can even take all of the proper steps and still have a bit of a dumpster fire by no fault of your own. So I mentioned the death doula client that I work with earlier, my friend Bob. He does the virtual death cafes every 2 weeks. We show up in a room and we talk about death. Well, he runs these public events, so you can go to Eventbrite and you can find this event. So any random person could show up there. Was it last week or the week before? I think it was last week. We had a Zoom bomber come into the room. They replaced their video tile with porn. So instead of seeing them like you would see me on camera right now, instead of seeing the person, we were watching their porn video feed on screen. So, obviously when we saw it, we tried to figure out who the person was, get them kicked out of the room, ended up having to play a little bit of round robin. We ended the event, had to restart it. Finally, we got that person out of there. So those type of things do still happen. It was really, really prevalent during COVID. You would see it all the time. It hasn't been as much recently. But what's really cool about those type of things happening, I mean, first of all, it sucks to have somebody show up and, flash private parts on your webinar when you're trying to have a very serious conversation. And that part sucks. But the cool part about something like that happening is that the audience gets to see you as the host in a light where most people would crack under that type of pressure. Somebody would probably freak out if all of a sudden there was a big thing on their screen. Like, not everybody is going to handle that type of situation well. So as an audience, when you see the host of your event handling something like that well, you understand what type of person they are, how they handle that type of pressure or difficult situations. One of my other clients, a very similar type situation, again, AI strategist, same type of thing happened. She ended up selling out her entire program after that happened.
So we need to schedule someone to bomb that.
Right. Yeah. So intentionally have somebody bomb your Zoom meeting. That is the best practice there. No, don't.
No, please do not do that. But I mean, it definitely gives a certain sentiment, right? So,
and again, something like that, if you're doing it by yourself, the likelihood that you're going to be able to get that person out of the room quickly and move on with your event is slim. Those guys are creative. They purposefully do that stuff to mess with you. So if you don't know how to handle it, if you don't know how to get that person out of the room, your event will suffer.
One thing I had a big thought of is, there's a lot of events that go on worldwide now, especially with with the access that people have. And I talk a lot about asynchronous communication, and it's something that's very big in remote work. So people into different time zones. How do you design a virtual event, or a team meeting when not everybody can show up live? And maybe your audience is all over the world.
It's that is tough, because really, if you're doing a live event, that is an experience in and of itself. Recording a live event and watching it back later doesn't always, you can get the same information from it, but it's not going to be the same experience for people. So ideally, in my experience, it's best to have multiple iterations of an event if you are going to have that type of conflict with time zones, right? Because you want people to be able to have that live experience. And if it truly is evergreen or asynchronous type content that you can pop into an LMS, why even bother doing a live event in the first place? Make sure that you have the outcome that you want figured out first. And if it's compliance, if it's regulatory, if it's stuff that's static and not going to change, it's not really going to make a huge significant difference, whether it's delivered live or, in a recording afterwards or otherwise, then use an LMS. But if it's important that people have the live experience, have multiple opportunities for them to have that live experience.
Good thoughts. Another thought is that, I think there's one thing people don't take into consideration is just culture with different people all over the world. As I've been having conversations with remote leaders that are utilizing staff members all over the world, is that there's certain parts of the world where people do things really well, and some parts of the world where, maybe you're not going to have them, do work or culture like creative things for America here, right? So, have you been in any instances where you've had, people in different cultures? Is pretty much the training and webinar, is it going to, are you trying to yield the same? What I'm trying to ask is, like, are you yielding the same, doing the same things in the same events, regardless of who it is? Or does it change at all depending on, the person and culture?
Yeah, it is going to change a little bit, because, the norms, customs, and standards of how they communicate and operate are going to be different in different parts of the world. And that's natural. I see a lot of that in when I do global town halls with Johnson & Johnson. They are very respectful and inclusive of all the different cultures around the world, and how they operate their events. You have some cultures where it is not uncommon for everybody in the room to remain off camera, right? Just because that's the way that it is, right? So yeah, those things do need to be taken into account, but I would say that the tools generally remain the same for the most part. And I will also add that, aside from just the stuff that's in, the base version of Zoom or Teams or any of the platforms, there's a lot of really cool add-on type programs that are out there now as well. You can do word clouds and chat waterfalls and all types of really cool stuff that is engaging and a little bit different. So it allows you to do some different things than maybe you typically would in an event.
So you mentioned polling questions and being interactive with your crowd. Is there anything else like live that you feel like is just, man, this is just a game changer when it comes to just um, something you feel like probably yields more than the normal, helps convert?
Well, I mean, so I would say this: it's a game of micro engagements throughout the entire virtual event, right? There's very overt engagement, right, where I'm asking people to answer a question, come off of mute, and participate in the discussion directly. But things like polling questions and chat prompts, those are a little bit more passive. It allows you to do something in just a few seconds and continue to move on. And each time that participant or that audience member is brought back to the platform and back to the conversation, that creates a level of engagements and affinity then for the person who's speaking, right? Every time you interrupt my pattern as I'm starting to look away to my other monitor, it brings me back into the conversation. And that alone, just keeping people engaged for the full time that you have them in the room, that often leads to more conversion, more conversations post event. And I'll say this, Jake, I make no guarantee with my clients that if they do a virtual event, that they will make sales from it. I can't, because I'm not going to be on their sales calls and I don't know how they're going to approach that conversation afterwards. But what I can help them with is getting the right people in the room and giving them a really good experience while they're there. And that will then likely lead to good conversations afterwards.
That usually comes with how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So
You nailed it.
so that's a good thought. Is there anything AI wise that has helped with the events that maybe is not, obviously you have you and you're not going to replace you, so to speak, but is there anything really that is really helping from a webinar standpoint?
Yeah. Okay. So, AI, I think it's important first to recognize that AI is a tool. It is not a free thinking entity, right? It has access to the entire internet world worth of information, but it does not have actual experience or lived memories of any of the things that it knows, quote unquote. So understanding that AI is basically the equivalent of a hammer. It is a tool, and how you use it really depends on you and your intentions, right? I can take a hammer and I can build an amazing house with it, or I can take it and I can beat somebody over the head with it. And it's the same thing with AI at the end of the day. It's how you use it and the intentions that you have behind it. A lot of people are trying to use AI to effectively replace thinking for themselves. And that is not a good thing to do. Now, using AI to elevate how you think, to explore ideas, to access information that you yourself don't know about or have access to normally, that's a good use of AI, right? Creating is not what it's for. It is not for creating because it's only pulling from the available information that it already has. It's not going to create a new, completely unique masterpiece symphony, right? Like it's going to be a mashup of whatever it already had access to, and it feels is what it thinks is going to give you what you're looking for.
I mean, there's no replacing the human producer in my opinion.
There's no replacing the human, period. Like there are certain things that technology is going to do better than us. Um, Emotional intelligence is not one of them. Being a good human being and how you treat other people, that is not something that AI is going to replace, right? Like those things, they are uniquely human, and we will always win from that perspective. We will never be replaced from that perspective.
A couple other questions I got for you that I want your insight on. I've been reading just a ton on burnout lately. Burnout and remote workers is a real thing. The separation between home and work, and back to back Zoom fatigue. Do you think that the way most companies are running the virtual meetings is actually making it worse?
I do. Unfortunately, because people are working from home and there is no real respect of boundaries, people are back to back all day, every day, oftentimes working late into the evening. Why? Because their computer is right there, sometimes even in their very kitchen, right? Like they can't even have dinner without seeing the computer there. And I believe that while good intentioned, people want to be more productive, get more done with their day. It just starts to encroach on your personal life because it's always there. It's all you just turn on the computer and you're right in it. And you don't have a commute to and from an office, right? As a remote worker, I used to joke, especially early days of COVID. My commute has never been better. It takes me 17 seconds to walk from my bed to my office. Like it, fabulous, but there's some value in that time, right? Being able to reflect on your day while you're driving home from work. Like my commute home now is out this door, up the stairs, and then guess what? My family is there, and I haven't had even a moment to decompress. I love them. I want to spend more time with them, but that transport, right? That travel time in real reality is very helpful for you as an individual and how you process and work through your day. We don't get that really when you're at working from home, right? You don't even get bathroom breaks sometimes. And again, self-imposed, not like you can't walk away from the computer, but it's there. You're trying to be productive. The next meeting's coming up. You got things to do, and next thing you know, you spent 15 hours at your computer.
There's been this past year, I feel like there's been a big return to office push, and leaders trying to mandate it, and then the employees pushing back. And where do you land on that? And do you think it changes the demand for what you do?
Well, I think that there are most certainly some roles and some industries that simply require you to be in person, right? Like there are some roles where it makes more sense to do it in person. But I think that there are still a lot of roles, mine being one of them as an example, a virtual producer, where I have no reason to step into your office. I do everything remotely and I am exceptionally productive doing it remotely. And I think there are a lot of people who are in very similar situations where they know they are more productive working from home, but the office or the people who are trying to get them to return to the office, it's not really about productivity. It's more about control. I just want to see what you're doing. I want you to have a presence here. Again, I get some of the culture aspects of having everybody together, but the reality is not everybody works well in an office. Not every job is suited or necessary for you to be in an office. And if I, as the individual contributor, work better from home, doing it remotely, why wouldn't you encourage that as an employer?
One last question here, the that I was thinking about while we've been talking is, if you had to predict, 5 years from now, what does the virtual meeting space look like? Are we still on Zoom? Are we somewhere completely different? I mean, are we putting on a headset and getting into an auditorium and someone's there virtually? I think about all the possibilities, right? I mean, when we were kids, we thought we'd be in flying cars, So I understand the being, trying to look towards the future, but what do you think realistically?
You know, people have been talking about like AR and VR for quite a while, right? The metaverse and all of that. And there are definitely use cases for it, right? Like in particular, things that come to mind are what I refer to as blood on the floor type scenarios, right? Really high risk, dangerous situations where it doesn't make sense to practice in a live environment. Those type of things, VR, AR makes a lot of sense. You can work through the activity and you can still do the thing. It's very immersive. But and maybe 5 years from now, it will be a little bit different. It's still very cost prohibitive to do that type of stuff at scale and at mass for a large audience. I definitely don't see virtual going away. It is an accepted way of doing business and communicating now. What it will look like in 3 to 5 years, though, I mean, gosh, part of me wants. You've seen the movie Ready Player One, right? Like fully immersive. You put on a whole suit and get in the thing. Like I could see that as being a thing, perhaps. Yeah, I can't even really fathom honestly where it will go because there's so many different potential formats and technologies that are being rolled out every single day. I mean, yeah, I can't even really fathom what 5 years from now looks like.
Yeah, it's fun to think about.
It is like you think of the Jetsons and, like stuff like it could be the Matrix, like all of that stuff could be very real 5 years from now. Instead of strapping on a headset or, logging into a Zoom, you're plugging something into the back of your head and now you're there.
Was there anything in the virtual event space that when you first got into it, you were like, man, this is really cool. This is awesome.
For me, I'll be honest with you, I was very resistant to it at first. I was like, I'm an in-person facilitator. I go places and I teach people things. I am not going to do this on camera, nor am I going to sit behind the camera and watch someone else do it. That's BS. But then once I got into it and I recognized that the experience I had as a facilitator was very relevant to me supporting other facilitators, I was like, oh, this is actually a lot of fun. I can anticipate what they need even before they need it sometimes. Yeah, I can do this. This is cool. I would say that's the thing that shifted for me. I was very resistant to it at first, but then once I got into it and I realized this is pretty cool, I really leaned into it. And I'll tell you, like when I was doing work for Ernst and Young during COVID, I was on the team of producers for less than a month. I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks before the person running the program, the account manager, tapped me and said, we want you to teach everybody how to do all of this stuff, because I got so excited about learning all of this stuff.
Man, that's awesome. That's so cool. Couple last questions here. I typically ask these questions of every guest that comes on because I just think it gives good insight of where you came from and how you got developed. But when you were young, did you ever think that this is where you'd end up?
Emphatically, no. I didn't have really, like I said, really much of an idea of what I wanted to be when I grew up. I definitely didn't think I would own a company, let alone a professional services company. Completely unexpected to be where I am now. I kind of figured that I would have a corporate 9-to-5 job for my whole life.
A lot of times people have instrumental influences. Is there a person, a mentor, a teacher, a coach that was big into where you're getting you to where you are today? Someone that who helped you, that saw something in you that maybe you didn't see yourself?
I would say that I've definitely had a lot of coaches and mentors over the year that have had a very significant impact on me. And I would probably venture to say that the one that had the biggest impact was a gentleman by the name of Mark Miller when I was working at Quicken Loans. It was really in large part because of him that I ended up getting that leadership development role and being able to grow in it. Had he not believed in me, my skills, my personality, really more so than anything, I think at the time, because I had no experience to do the things that I did, that absolutely changed the trajectory of my career without a doubt. Just having somebody in a level that they could make that type of determination, right, and have the power to give somebody that opportunity, having somebody in that type of space recognize the skill sets and value that I would bring even without me knowing, that was something I'll never forget.
Bernie, I've had a great time talking with you, man. If hopefully people get to watch this video and get to see your fantastic mustache, and the fact that you're a Detroit Tigers fan and all of your Iron Man. I need to get something better back here. I just gotta.
We gotta work on your background, Jake. We gotta work on your background.
I'm so plain, man. I get feedback from my producers, my wife, and they tell me you need to put something. And I've got some stuff ordered. I just got to put it up, right? And so I'm just very picky, and I
be intentional with it. That's a good part. It's okay to be picky. Be intentional with it.
Yeah. So I'm your background, something I aspire to. I'll get some stuff that'll say Jake behind me, but. And so, hopefully, I just always tell people I have a face for radio, so they don't really want to watch the video portion, right? So, but anyway, it's been great. I'd like for you to tell everybody where they can find you and get a hold of you, and definitely do everybody a favor and have a great webinar event and get someone that knows what they're doing, please, because I'm getting so tired of going to webinars that are just I've been to the webinars you're talking about where they just don't even turn their camera on. And so how can they find you? How can they get in touch with you?
Well, I'm very active from a social media standpoint on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. But of course, they can go to the website, insigniatraining.com. They can submit a request for services and set up a meeting. We'd be happy to support any events that anybody wants to try to roll out.
Sounds good. And to everyone listening, if this episode gave you something, share it with another leader who's, trying to build remote or hybrid teams or needs help with a webinar. Leave us a review, subscribe to wherever you get podcasts. And if you need help with anything IT technology wise, I work for a company called Creative IT, and we help with remote and hybrid teams, securing and training and all of those types of elements. So appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Remote First Innovators Podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.